Oh man, what did you bring this time, Max?
I brought a 60-year-old Homelite.
Oh man, check that thing out. I think I've seen it before.
You have seen it before, but we're gonna actually try and use it a little bit today.
All right. So specs, what do we got here?
This is a 1960 or 1961, not sure exactly, Homelite 600D. And they did it in cubic inches. I think it's 5.1 cubic inches, which comes out to, it's a mid 80 cc saw, roughly. Manual oiler only.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get strong doing that.
Yeah, it's not a light one. It's not made for limbing. Interesting thing, I think, this bar is a solid tip bar, no roller, just solid tip. I like I like the brass dogs on it.
Oh man, those are nice.
That is super cool. There's brass fittings
Little brass
for the oiler. The oiler button itself is brass. I love this huge old fuel line. I mean, that's literally off of a car. The choke. I like that. Can you see in there? The jets in there are knurled, so that you can actually reach in there and adjust it.
So you don't need a screwdriver?
Don't need a screwdriver. Man. It's got the option for a screwdriver too, but just a neat saw. Comes with a story too. I'll tell that in a little bit.
Start it up. Let's cut that crown.
For the record, this saw has not been started for probably over a year. Well, I'll go through the starting procedure. It's kind of unique. So, you turn the ignition off, okay? And you wait for the Blackhawk to pass over. So, ignition off, right? And you turn the choke on, which is up, if I remember right, I think. And then you want to pull the motor over 3 or 4 times. That's priming, okay?
A little bit of compression there, huh?
A little bit. Now, we got a throttle lock. So I want to lock that throttle in to position. I'm going to oil it a little bit because it's probably going to start and really want to go. And then turn the ignition on and see what happens. Might be the wrong direction on the choke.
Switch from one to the other.
It should be. Something I forgot to mention about this old saw. I think it's just the way the carbs are on these things, but the Hyja, if you tune it to where it runs properly without being in the wood, you know, not smoking like crazy, not Wazy Rich, then as soon as you put it in the wood, it just dies.
just no power at all. So the way I've tuned this one, and everyone that I've seen before like this saw, you gotta have it tuned in the wood, 100% in the wood. See, it'll smoke and go crazy outside of the wood when you start revving on it. But once you get it into the wood, it's a whole different story. So I just thought that was interesting about these saws. I think technology has come away on the carbs, but anyway.
What do you think?
I think it's not bad for a 60-year-old saw.
So lots of torque, but not the speed of the Stihl or the 372.
Definitely not the speed. You can somewhat compensate for that. So this is running a 404 chain, which is a bigger chain, bigger tooth. And the one that's on it is a semi-chisel. It's just what came with it. It was really dull when I got it, but I got it halfway sharp, as you can see. And I took the rakers way down, like way beyond sanity, right? Because this thing just operates with a lot of torque. It's a low RPM, high torque saw. It's made for falling like old growth, you know, in the 60s. So doing something like this is a twig to this saw. Get the rakers way down and you can actually cut through it pretty good. And it throws nice big chips.
So I've had this saw for, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I'm not sure exactly. And I'll tell the story about that in a minute. But I've never really put it into the wood. I played around with it a little bit before, doing test cuts and stuff, playing with the chain, but never anything but cutting a few cookies. So I figured, what the hey, let's give it a shot. We got log pile, decent sized wood, not huge by any stretch, but let's see how it goes. Alright, so here's the story of this saw. Like a lot of saws, I found it, it was either on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. I don't remember. And found it late at night after I'd gotten off work. And the guy had it listed for $40. I think it was 40 or 50. Pretty sure it was 40. And I figured, since I like old stuff, and especially old saws, if nothing else, if it was locked up or whatever, I could make a sweet hood ornament out of it for my ratty old flatbed. Right? Well, I go and meet the guy, and I ask him if there's a story behind the saw, and he says, well, yeah, actually. My father-in-law brought the saw up from Oregon when he moved up here about 25 years ago. He said that his father-in-law was a logger in the late 60s in Oregon, and this was his saw. He brought it up, and then a few years later, his father-in-law ended up moving back to Oregon and left the saw. Okay, so the guy inherits the saw, and then he says about 20 years ago, I needed to fall a few trees on my property. So I pulled the old saw out, got it running, fell one tree, and then I went and bought a new small steel. And I laughed, and I said, all right. So I bought the saw, and I brought it home. I pulled it over just to see if it was locked up. It wasn't locked up. But I took it home, opened up the gas tank, and the gas smelled fine. You know, old gas is a lot better than new gas. It stays good much longer. So I pulled it over. It sounded like it had good compression and everything. Kind of figured out the controls on it. And I think I pulled on that thing 8 or 9 times before it popped. And the next pull, it just fired right up and ran. Now, it was tuned weird, and I had to do some research and stuff, but you know, I bought this big old saw for $40, and this video right here proves you can absolutely use it. It's heavy. I mean, it's really heavy, but it's usable, and I just think it's really, really neat. Now let's come back to the same log pile right after that. And this is the Makita EA 7900 PRZ2. Full wrap handle, 79cc saw. Modern saw. Modern pro saw, you know. And obviously, it cuts faster. No question about that, right? But I will tell you from just what I did today that it's not as much faster as you would think. And I think that with the proper chain, because remember the chain on the Homelite is a semi-chisel chain, rounded tooth BS. And this is a square grind, full chisel, full comp, modern chain. They do have chains available that are modern go fast chains that I could slap on that old Homelite. And I kind of want to see what it'll do. I just haven't bought one yet. If one person comments on this video and says they want to see a go fast chain on that old saw, I'll order one and we'll do that. That's all it's going to take. You don't have to pay for it or anything like that. Just one person say that they want to see that. I'll do it. Absolutely. The funny thing though, the thing that I did want to mention is like that old saw. Okay, so it's 60, 61, 62 years old, somewhere in there. This saw, this Makita, is brand new. A year old. That Makita, if you look them up right now, I think they're just under $1,000. And that's no bar, no chain. That old Homelite, I've seen other ones, similar ones anyway, and you can usually pick them back around $50 to $200. The weight difference is substantial, but if you were cutting on a budget, that old Homelite has some upsides for sure. I think it'll actually beat the Makita in real big wood, but we'll have to test that another day. The hardest thing to get used to about this old saw is the manual oiler. That brass button just above your trigger thumb. The way I found that works the best for me in this size wood is to just pump one in between each cut. It seems to be enough oil, and you don't have to sit there trying to oil while you're cutting. But it's difficult to get used to if you have never run that type of saw before. I've run a few, but this is the most I've ever done of actual cutting. I cut with this thing for an hour or two. Anyway, guys, I think that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. If it's your first time in the channel, please consider subscribing. If it's not your first time, thanks for coming back, and whether it is or it isn't, let me know down in the comments. I think that this stuff is super cool. I love the old saws. If you'd like to see more, let me know.